We've still not left the European Union. The question's one that seems to pervade, for better or worse, everything our politics is currently about. Some will see it as betrayal, some as respite. Rod Liddle, who voted for Brexit, says he predicted on the evening of the referendum result that we would not leave. He blames what he calls the establishment. Tom Baldwin is a leading figure on the People's Vote campaign, former advisor to Ed Miliband, and believes we'd be better off taking the mess we're in back to the people. Welcome both. I wonder about the timing of your book, Rod. You've called it The Great Betrayal. When we're about to leave. We're 3 months away from leaving, probably with the hardest Brexit that anyone imagined.
I know that fear lurks in all Remainer hearts, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen. The book's called The Great Betrayal because we were meant to have left on March the 29th. We didn't. 3 years almost for the government to try to do what the people had asked them politely in that referendum that they might do, and it hadn't worked. And the same dynamic is there right now.
Yeah, so when you say it hadn't worked, what is this great betrayal? We had a Prime Minister who, God knows, tried for 3 hours to deliver Brexit. We've got an incoming PM who's promised a fixed date, and a hard exit.
But what's he said? It's the same narrative as before. So this idea of no deal, which was brought up by Theresa May when she went to Brussels and when she went to negotiate with Tusk and Europe, it was a paper tiger. And it was a paper tiger because all the time, back home, Philip Hammond would be saying there is no possibility of a no deal. There is no possibility. What do we have now? We have Boris Johnson saying solid date, October.
It was Philip Hammond and not all the people in the REG, all the Brexiteers who didn't vote for it, who stopped Brexit happening. Why don't you recognise that?
Possibly I do. It's in the book. Possibly. But just to go back to that other point about Boris, Boris has said very firm, we leave, we have to. And has raised the prospect of no deal. And then at other times has said there is 1,000,000 to 1 chance that we will leave with no deal. In other words, it's a paper tiger again.
Tom Baldwin.
Well, look, I think a lot of people do feel betrayed by the last 3 years on Brexit. I think Remainers and Leavers feel betrayed by what's happened on Brexit, because what's being offered now, whether it's a revival of Theresa May's deals or lipstick on that pig, or an accidental slide into no deal, which I think is a real prospect, it's both for 1,000,000 miles away from what was promised in 2016, the thing that you voted for. On that basis, you've got a kind of mis-selling scandal here. You've got something which is not being delivered, which was promised. You've got Parliament divided. They can't decide on what form of Brexit to go ahead with. You've got the country divided. And the solution is to actually, in this democratic crisis, it's more democracy, not less. Put it back to the people and let the people decide.
Well, of course, the latest opinion poll from YouGov suggested that 57% of the population want to leave in some form or another.
No,
I mean,
it's interesting. This, you can slice and dice this in different ways.
But that is what the poll said.
You quote polls in your book as well, showing that there's now a Remain majority. Now, I mean, if you're so confident about this, let's put it back to the people.
It's morally the wrong thing to do. The people voted. I mean, I don't think this is about what do you call it? What's the phrase you give to the people's vote these days? Of course, it's a people's vote because the people who voted first time.
There's a people's vote last time as well, but the people have been let down. Yeah, you call it a great betrayal. The people have been betrayed here by the politicians. Let the people decide this and sort this mess out. Because quite clearly, the politicians
Brexit hasn't been the problem. Brexit hasn't been the problem.
What sort of Brexit do you want?
What sort of Brexit do you want? Brexit hasn't been the problem. The ineptitude of the politicians and also the deliberate betrayal by some of those politicians, including quite a lot on the Remainer side, that has been the problem. There's been no inherent problem with Brexit. Now, I would leave with no deal. I would prefer to leave with no deal than to leave with the deal which the ERGers voted for.
Isn't the truth that actually there is complete unity here, because you're delighted that we haven't Brexited yet, and you're delighted that you can get angry about it because that's your currency. You can get everyone up in arms.
But that's what he does. He's a columnist.
He's a columnist. That's a bit fatuous, isn't it?
That's what you do.
I'm sitting. My point is that I'm angry because we haven't left.
No, look,
and I'm representing the people, trying to represent the people, and that's why I've written the book,
Rod,
who are angry that they haven't left. To say that I'm pleased because I'm a columnist...
You're not just angry that we haven't left. You say that the Remainer argument was that all leavers were basically racist and xenophobes.
I said...
You pretty much say that the Remainer argument is that all leavers are basically racist and xenophobes.
No, I say that that was one of the... That was one of the big tropes of the referendum campaign. Didn't work very well. Obviously, telling the people you want to vote for you that they're thick, racist, uneducated, and even worse than any of those things, old, didn't play very well. But it has helped some of the MPs to assuage their fears of going against the public vote by saying, well,
That's the language you use. Would you describe yourself as a racist? Because many see you that way.
Well, no, obviously not. But I am used to going on BBC programmes and being accused of such things when there is no evidence.
When all you do is write about suicide bombers blowing themselves up in Tower Hamlets, or a black Labour MP, Kate Osmore, saying she only got the job because her skin colour.
Do you have to, at every possible juncture, show the BBC's grotesque bias?
But these are your words, Rod.
These are your words.
You wrote them.
And
sorry, have you worked this out between you?
No, it's just what a lot of people think about it. It's just what a lot of people think about it.
You're writing about what this great betrayal it is, that all Brexiteers are portrayed as racist, and then you come up with things saying postal voters in Peterborough thought they were ticking a box to choose a Tarka dal or a brinjal bhaji. I suppose this last comment will be considered racist. It is consistent, casual racism.
That's not casual racism
week
at all.
after week from you.
That's
what you trade in. What is it then?
It's nothing to do with racism.
Why do you say I suppose this last comment...
It's about voter fraud in Peterborough, which happened particularly amongst the Pakistani community. And it was organised by a man called Tariq Mahmood, who was sent to prison for doing exactly that. So get a grip, Emily.
Why is it? Go on, Tom. Why is it then?
Well, look, Rod, to sort of defend Rod for a sec, he's a paid polemicist, right? He's paid a lot of money by Rupert Murdoch and the Barclay brothers to be a sort of scourge of what he calls the establishment. The trouble is, you are the establishment, right? Look, when you wrote, as Emily points out, that you wanted an Islamic fundamentalist to blow himself up in Tower Hamlets because it would be a decent distance from the rest where the rest of us live.
Yes,
who was the us? Was that the people? Was it white people? Was it rich people?
It was an entirely serious point, as you well know, as you would have known if you'd actually read it.
Why did you write it?
There's comedy sometimes, yes. Do you not know comedy? Do you not understand it?
I just wonder, when it's so consistent, when it's week after week, the bile that you spew up has to be who you are. This kind of stuff.
Bile.
Why would you mention black MPs, female Labour MPs one week, and Tower Hamlets the next week, and the people who are ticking a box to choose a Tarka dal?
This is a real problem. You cannot but help it that there are 17.4 million people out there who are distressed.
So this is about them.
And they're not
this is
like
about
you.
them.
It's not like you.
That they're distressed. They're distressed at the betrayal. And one of the things they're most distressed about is the way the BBC has behaved in the last 2.5 years.
You write this in your book. You say that everyone has been portrayed as xenophobic and racist. I'm simply using your language.
And you're doing it again.
I know.
Yes, you're doing it again.
You do walk into it a bit, though, don't you?
Yeah. No, I don't walk into anything. I speak what I think is the truth and what I think people like to hear.
Tom, your argument that we have to go back to the people's vote is exactly the noise that left us all in this ridiculous position. You don't accept democracy, and we've had democracy, and we've had the vote.
Look, when you're in a democratic crisis like this, when MPs can't decide what to do, when the country is divided, I'm not a huge fan of referendums. I spent 2015 in the general election opposing David Cameron's reckless decision to have a referendum. I'm not jumping up with joy at the idea of another one. But I do think this is the only way to solve this crisis. It's the only legitimate way to solve this crisis.
But you always
because I think anything imposing. No, actually, I didn't.
That.
I started working for the People's Vote campaign last year.
The only people who are in favour of the People's Vote campaign, I mean, come on, Tom, with very, very few exceptions, are people who voted to remain.
Yeah, and what I want to get is more and more people like you, Rod, who believe that there's been a great betrayal. And I want people to recognise now that, whether you voted leave or remain, the only way to sort out this gigantic mess is to put it back to the people, trust the people, Be a Democrat rather than hide behind the establishment and the big proprietors of the newspapers that you work for.
The democracy is spoken, but you won't listen to it, and you wouldn't listen to it a second time either. And if you wouldn't listen to it a third time, and of course the next vote, of course, wouldn't be quite as simple as that. It would be between May's deal, it would be Boris's deal, another deal, or leave, or stay, and you know that it wouldn't be. You know that it would be gerrymandered, so that the people who voted would lose their.
I actually do trust our democratic systems. I don't think Peterborough was a system of voting fraud. I don't think
Peterborough. Think there was voting fraud in Peterborough?
I don't think it was people who didn't speak English, as you put it, who thought their vote ticking a box for Bombay Aloo.
But that's exactly what happened in other places around the country. In Birmingham,
you thought they were ordering a curry.
There was literally no proof of that.
No, there was not. That was a joke. You don't get jokes.
OK. On that final thought, we will end it. Thank you both very much for coming in.
We won't.